one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Hello everyone and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, your source for the best in RPG interviews. I am your host and king of the boneheads, Ryan Howard, and joining me this evening is the project manager from Horde Games. They've got this great Kickstarter up right now that's got 3 days left. Boneheads, ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate Bestiary Miniatures Kickstarter. We are fully backed with 3 days to go. But ladies and gentlemen, to talk about that and so much more from Horde Games, here is Greg Peterson. Greg, welcome to Rollin' Bones.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Really excited. The Kickstarter is about to finish, so I'm about to get to my point where I'm not going to sleep for the next couple of days, but it's a good reason, not the usual just insomnia.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Well, Greg, we are going to kick this show off the same way we start every show. I've got these questions that everyone has to answer on Rollin' Bones. So Let's begin at the beginning. How did you get into RPGs?
Like me personally, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I could actually say that it's more of a what's the term for it? Kind of like I was born into it. My father has been in the game industry for 35, 40 years now. He actually was one of the founders of Champions of Hero Games. If anyone knows that, that's a superhero tabletop RPG that had the hero system, and he made that way before I was born, and was still working as part of that company when I was just a wee lad. So, and he's always been one of the biggest nerds I know. And so thanks to him, I've always known about RPGs and always have been like, had it be a part of my life, D&D and stuff. And I didn't really start playing a lot of RPGs until I was in high school, when I'd play here and there little things with my family, but I didn't really have my own adventures with my own group of friends until high school with D&D 3.5. And then I grew from there to like grabbing Pathfinder, skipping 4 completely, to now I have Pathfinder 2 that I play, as well as a little bit of D&D 5. I actually ended up sticking with Pathfinder a little bit more than D&D, but that's just personal choice. It's not like I've never touched it or anything.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I've been a part of RPGs and have been playing them, both on computers and on video games and on tables for a very long time.
Gotcha. Now, you've already alluded to this a little bit, but if you had to pick a favorite game or game system of all time, what would that be?
Well, if I were like a system to play video games on, would be a computer. I invest so much time.
I mean, like an RPG system.
But RPG system?
I mean, that's good to know as well. It's nice to have a fellow PC gamer on here, but RPG system.
I had to get that one out there because PCs. But RPG system, I would have to say it's currently just Pathfinder First Edition, just because the amount of time and effort I put into it, the amount of like resources I've dived into it, years of gaming I put into it. But 3.5 still has a warm place in my heart, and 5 is really fun, and Pathfinder Second Edition is still like this new uncharted territory because they're still constantly bringing out more content for it. It's still so new. But at the top currently is Pathfinder First Edition.
Gotcha. Cool. So I mean, going back to the early days of gaming, if you can remember your very first character, that's great. But if not, can you tell us about your most memorable character?
Yeah, I can remember my very first character. Um, there's so like I do have one that is definitely more memorable, but my very first character when I was fairly young, um, I think this was it was D&D 3. I think this was before 3.5. I'm not really sure because it was just my dad saying, "Hey, let's show you. Let me show you Dungeons and Dragons." And so I made a druid. Um, I can't remember his name though, but he had a dog companion because I love dogs. And my dad would just sit me down with just solo adventures, just going off doing things. And the main thing I remember about him is how incompetent he was, because I was rolling horribly to do anything on him except when it was the dog doing something. So, as my father would put it, well, it looks like your character was the dog with his companion, the druid, and
Yeah.
it was very true because my dog would crit on the hit, and my companion would like my druid would fumble on the hit. I'm like, oh come on. That was my very first one. I just remember as a child sitting at this little round table with my dad, having my character sheet and my dice, and he would just like explain the whole world around me, and it was just so fascinating.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting and something that I find as someone whose dad never played RPGs, and I didn't discover RPGs till I was in college.
Mhm.
Uh, just I imagine that in your household, the way my father handed me like a football or a baseball the second I could grasp an object, your dad was just like, "Here is a D20. Here is a
Yep,
player's handbook."
pretty much exactly that. Because I remember back like even younger still, I'd be like sitting on his lap while he's playing one of those original computer games, like some of the really old point and click adventures.
Hmm.
Um, just that would come out in the early '90s from LucasArts.
Hmm.
If you've ever played any of those ones,
Oh yeah.
they were pretty fantastic. Or watching him play Resident Evil when I was like 7 and giving me nightmares, crying. You're like, oh, there's zombies gonna come in my closet. My mom walks in. Your closet doesn't have any doors. Go to sleep. But yeah, exactly that. I still played sports. It was still pretty
Mhm.
fun stuff. But gaming, I've always has always had like a really close place
Yeah.
growing up with.
It sounds like you're actually pretty close to me in age. What year were you born?
I was born in 1991.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, so you're my older sister's age. I was born in 95.
Ah, yeah. I keep thinking that I'm young, and then I look at the actual age and the age of other people around me. I'm like, oh no, I'm getting older.
All good.
But
Typically, I am a solid 10 years younger, probably more than a lot of the guests that I have on, so it's cool every now and then to have someone on who is also a child of the 90s.
yeah, pretty fun time, must say. Would do it again. 10 out of 10.
Absolutely. Gotcha. So, we've talked a lot about you as a player. How often do you get to go behind the screen? Do you find yourself pretty often in that position, or is that something that you kind of leave to other people?
For the most part, I've left it to other people. I have tried a few times. My first attempt was a resounding failure. It was like to the point of where I didn't think it was a success when I had to argue with one of the players about how he can't play a lute and swing a sword at the same time as a bard, and for some reason he thought he could. And that was an interesting time. I've tried again a few times here or there, but I've always found more fun being the player.
Hmm.
Especially because like within my friend group, we have a few of us that are just really good DMs, to the point where they do it all the time, and we're just kind of used to it. Of course, they love being players too, but so they'll do like swap offs, and sometimes they'll just they'll just leave it to us as the players to run the campaign.
Hmm.
They're just there to roll the dice for the enemies,
Yep.
because a lot of us that I play with were really experienced in that effect. Like we just started a campaign like a week ago, and the DM She was just like, hey, by the way, I don't have a plan for this. I have some stories, I have some things we could do, but it's gonna be driven by you guys, the players. You're gonna decide where you go. You're gonna decide what you do, and I'm just gonna react to it properly. And I know that she's skilled enough that she definitely can, and so we're really excited for this campaign. I am a wizard in it, and
Gotcha.
a wizard who accidentally became a wizard because they just found a book and it had magical spells in it, and they figured out that they were adept at it. So they're just kind of learning as they go.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a cool way to do it, because there's always this thing about RPG characters, especially when you start out at first level. This idea of my character went to magic school or went to bard college or, was in the military, but
yeah,
I can only do these few things because I'm a first level character.
yeah.
So,
That always doesn't make sense with that backstory type thing.
yeah.
I feel like, well, at level 1, you are in the beginning of that backstory.
Mhm.
Like you are the backstory.
And the way that I've kind of had to think about it in my mind, and just, looking at monster manuals and stuff like that, the concept of even having a a level as a character
Mhm.
has to be something that's really exceptionally rare within these worlds.
Right.
Like, if you looked at a standing army, the people who maybe have 1 to 2 levels as fighters would be like sergeants or lieutenants or captains.
Right.
Any of your like average fighting men probably wouldn't have a level. That's kind of how I've rationalized it in my head, that yeah, you were a grunt for a long time, but now you are an adventurer and you're just getting to where you know enough to be kind of a first level fighter. But even
Right.
still, I like your approach to this of, I'm a first level wizard because I found this book and I'm teaching myself magic.
Yeah, I really am enjoying like the path I'm taking with this. I'm gonna have them, like, before that they were kind of a tinkerer, inventor. They just were very intelligent in that way, and so I'm gonna have them grow into creating their own magic items, and just seeing how that goes. And so I mean, we'll see. We just started. It could fail. They could just end up dying. Who knows? Low level wizard, you don't have a lot of hope.
Also, I feel the need, with the story that you told about your first time GMing, I feel the need to get out in front of potential arguments that I could have with any prospective players in campaigns of mine who think that they can relitigate the bard playing a lute and fighting with a sword at the same time.
Hmm.
Unseen Servant does not have your charisma score or your ability to cast magic. And Mage Hand does not have the strength to hold or use a sword, or the prehensile capability to fret the chords on a lute.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna put the kibosh on that right now. That
They were
argument's
saying
not
that
gonna fly with me.
they were saying that they could hold the sword, strum, in the same movement, strum and swing. And I'm just like, no,
No.
no. And it was just got to the point. I'm like, look, I'm the DM. You have to do what I say. And he just responds with, no, absolutely not. I'm like, ah,
Why?
right.
Do I need? I've got a guitar in the closet. Do I need to go grab
Yeah.
it? And
Yeah. I have a sword in the closet too.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. Like, come on, let's do this.
not even. No. No. What?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You understand where I'm coming from with this.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone else at the table was on your side.
Yeah, but just having someone so negative in my first experience at DMing made it so difficult to want to continue.
Absolutely.
And just like, you need the support from the players just as much as the players need the support from the DM, or it to be like, you have to have an understanding between each other.
Yeah.
Otherwise, because both sides are there to have fun.
Mhm.
It's not supposed to be a babysitting event. It's even if you are a paladin, it's it's supposed to be fun for everyone. That's then what's the point if someone's not having fun doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is this is role playing 101, but for anyone out there who is new to role playing, or just hasn't really kind of thought in this way about RPGs, one of the GM's roles is the arbiter of the rules. Ultimately, the rule book, it gets a little bit hairy when you say the rule book is just a bunch of suggestions. Ultimately, it is down to the GM's interpretation of the rules. The GM can be wrong. The GM can, go back later and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong about this." Maybe they could interpret something wrong, but in the moment at the table, what the GM says is what happens. So
Correct.
you have to, like you said, you have to have that respect for the role, no matter who's behind the screen, if it's their first time or their 50th time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is on the players as well to catch those things. And like, because like, oh hey, I got away with I fudged the die roll a little bit. What's the point? Like you're why cheat in a game where you're the creators and you're the masters of it? Like what? Like that's just making it a worse experience for everyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have a newer one of our campaigns I'm running is we have a newer GM and he's really trying. He's doing a really good job. But there's definitely times where we're just like, oh hey, what we've seen before is this. Like the players will give them suggestions. Like two of the players in this campaign are usually the GMs in our game group, and so they're just there. They know they're like, hey, it is your decision, but this is what we usually do, or this is how we would go about it. But they always remind them, you're the DM. It is ultimately your decision on what you wanted to say or do, or how have this this whole thing work out. And that's really important for them to make sure they know that, and for them to grow as a DM, because I think they'll be really good at it once they get more experience under their belt.
Absolutely. Now you've already talked about it a little bit, especially in discussing kind of your idea with the wizard teaching himself to be a wizard. But if you had to describe your play style as a player, how would you describe that?
My play style overall is like, if I were to just sit down and just play how I want to play without trying to rein myself in for the character I've created. Very boisterous, very outgoing. Like I would definitely be the face of the group, but I would also be like the front lines as well.
Gotcha.
I would absolutely be the first into the fray, and I would always I'd just be that commander style person, the personality too. I'm there to make sure that everyone is safe, that we get through this quest and in its entirety, that everyone lives to see the next day. I'll have that mama bear mentality of protecting everyone, but then I'll also make sure that we don't stray from the wrong path. So, but I don't see myself playing a paladin ever.
I was just about to say, how often do you play a paladin?
Never.
Never.
I have actually played more druids than anything else. My longest played character was a cleric monk. It was very interesting, very fun, very out of the box style play that we did, because we ended up becoming very powerful in it, and just kind of grew it into our own little multiverse thing. But yeah, I've done a lot of monk, druid, barbarian, a little bit of rogue. A couple times I tried being a ranger, but then my character died both times horrifically. Let's not talk about ranger.
Rangers are hard. I love rangers, but rangers are difficult.
Look, failing that saving throw and getting and being the very life force sucked out of you by a vampire kind of sucks when you're a ranger.
Yep.
But yeah, I played a paladin one night, and that's about it. So I just haven't really had the time to sit down and really play a paladin before.
Gotcha. Now, this next question can be very difficult for people who, come on shows like this and do stuff like this as part of their day job. But if you had to pick a fondest RPG memory, what would that be for you?
Fondest RPG memory will be killing another player in the game. Now, it doesn't sound like that's kind of mean. He had it coming, for one. Yeah. Two, it just was that you had that sweet, because he was trying to completely derail the campaign, take over and rule the world that we were in with his character. So he was trying to usurp the DM and destroy like his lead character, the NPC that we were following, and take over. And so it became a but my DM didn't want, he was like, okay, well, we're going to play this out, see what happens. I'm not going to just like stop him because he's the DM. And so we went through the whole went through all these like different trials of just figuring out that he was trying to betray us, discovering what his plans were, and then ultimately like stopping him and executing him, because this was actually an evil campaign, and that was not beyond the scope of what we would do as the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very, very fun to get through the whole thing. You know, a little salty that he did it, because it was just like, come on, dude, like that was like, why did you decide to do that? He's not really the best of people to play with. But looking back on it, I'm like, that was a sweet arc. That was a sweet arc of the campaign, and I look forward to going back to it again with his character still dead.
Absolutely. As Elfie, my wife here, says in chat, it was a murder but not a crime.
Yeah, it was a murder but not a crime. That's correct, because the leader of the tribe was the one who finished him off because he tried to, kill him. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, my fondest RPG memory also involves PvP. It wasn't the same situation as yours where someone was actively trying to derail a campaign. It was a natural progression of, there was a character passing notes with the GM over several sessions that led to a rift in the party at the very end, but it turned into me and one other player. I was like tank / DPS because I was a ranger, a 20th level ranger. Mm-hmm. And this other guy was a 20th level trickster rogue in 5e. So it was the two DPS characters, the two boss killers basically, versus everyone else.
Oh jeez.
And we wrecked shop.
Nice. Yeah, we've definitely done like some off the books PvP challenges with our own characters just to see, well, I bet my character's stronger than your character. All right, let's find out. Grab your dice.
Yep.
Grab your sheet.
Absolutely. Now, you've already alluded to a couple of these, and I'm not sure how you could top either of these stories that you have told so far, but there are people who play this game that, don't have the best of intentions. Maybe they think they can win at D&D. Maybe they think, that what their character would do is completely derail everyone else's fun. But, the worst of these offenders we call that guy. So other than the two that you've already told, do you have another that guy story that you're comfortable sharing on the show?
Absolutely. Now, granted, there's two that guys that we have that are just notorious cheaters. In our play groups in the past, and we actually have nicknames for them, but it does involve their real names, so I'm not going to tell you the nicknames.
Gotcha.
But God, one of the best scenes with that guy. Now he rolls the die, the D20, but then slightly covers it with his hand as he rolls, and then just says what it is. So, and it's very obvious he's like cheating with that. Like, it's like, we're all sitting at the table like, dude, come on. So we got a dice tower, said you have to use the dice tower, but then he will still like do this crazy convoluted math, and he'll say it all out loud to try to like confuse us, and then we know he'll just like throw in a +2 there, or be like, oh wait, what about this extra buff? Yeah, this one was there too, so did that hit? And so we'll just constantly we just have to like kind of let it go at times. We're just like, he doesn't stop. He thinks it's fine. So the story, he just the normal, rolls the die, says it's this, says the number. DM's like, no, that doesn't work. And one of our other players is like, oh, don't forget to add +2 for cheating. And he looks at him like, what are you talking? Oh, you're right, I do have a +2. And we're like, oh my God. It just went right over his head. that that's what we meant.
Yep.
And it's just because then he just, oh, you're right, I do have a +2.
Make a self-awareness check.
Yeah. And then another one, that guy is that I would like to say it's because he didn't know how to play, but I'm pretty sure he did. I'm pretty sure he was just bullshitting and see how far he could get with it. But he would, whenever he got a temporary bonus on a stat, would not remove it. So after a few days, like after a few sessions of gaming, yes, for some reason had 52 strength. And thought that was normal.
Mm-hmm.
We audited we looked at his sheet, and they're just like, excuse me? So they had like the DM had to go through and just completely remake his sheet to make sure that it was actually correct. It was just
Sorry, my cat's being noisy. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no worries. But yeah, those are my that guy stories where we definitely have those happen. But I love the, oh, don't forget the +2 for cheating. Oh yeah, you're right, I do have a +2.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Again, for new players, it's you're a wizard and you forget that it's mage armor that makes you a little bit harder to hit, and you just forget that when the GM asks for your AC, you forgot to cast it. Experienced players, though, that's probably one of the most common forms of just like soft cheating in the game, is people forgetting to cast the thing that gives them the temporary hit points.
And they'll be like, can we say I cast it?
Yeah. And I mean, like, there are things, like, right now I'm playing a Hexblade Warlock in 5e, and part of that is every day during your long rest, you have to perform this ritual to make your blade, make the blade that you have bound to your patron and do all the crazy stuff that you can do. Stuff like that, whenever you take a long rest, you can assume that player is going to do that. But other stuff where it's actually like cast a spell or something like that, yeah, you need to say that. You need to take the action, because a lot of times it is an action. I can't just assume as a warlock that I've got Armor of Agathis as soon as I go into combat, because it's an action to cast.
Yep. I always like try to make sure when I'm a spellcaster to be like, okay, what are the durations of my spells? What times would I be casting them?
Yep.
And try to make sure I cast those long ones early and announce that I cast them and remove them. Sometimes there was like, oh gosh, I forget which spell it was, but it was like, look, I'm always going to have this cast first thing in the day because it lasts 10 hours. And I talked to the DM about it, and like, I'm just going to remove the spell slot from my list of available spells and say it's always cast. And they're like, yeah, okay, you're good. And so we'll always assume that you have this activated on you. So like, I'll do that as like a shortcut, but it's definitely not cheating.
Right.
There's absolutely times you're just like, oh shit, I didn't cast it. Scribble. Yeah, look at that. I did. I've may have done that before. I think everyone.
We all have. It's again, it's not a huge deal, but it's one of those things, if you begin to rationalize that in your mind, at that point, you start to rationalize fudging dice rolls, fudging stats, and
but then at the end of the day, like I said, it's all about having fun.
Exactly.
And making sure you have that spell cast earlier is what you needed to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Then I say, go ahead as the DM and allow that. Say like, yeah, sure, we'll retcon it and say that you did cast it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as you're not ruining anyone else at the table's time, then
yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Just don't let it get out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've got one last introductory question here. This one has flummoxed a few people before, and I'll tell you the answer to this question can be as philosophical or sophomoric as you want it to be. So, Greg, if you could put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be?
Well, I guess I have to respond first with what kind of rating is this channel?
You can say whatever you want. Don't worry about
it. Okay. Secondly, that actually had no bearing to what would be on the shirt at all. Uh, um, honestly, like I would probably just go back to some of the shirts I have had in the past, where I had this one shirt that all it said was "proud to be awesome," and that was it. It was just in this classic like '80s text, and that's all it said. And people just feel like, "Huh, yeah, all right, nice shirt." I'm like, "Yeah, sums up. It sums up everything pretty much. Like, don't gotta explain anything. Just pretty proud to be awesome."
Hmm.
Nah, or I could give the answer of what I really like having on a shirt is my company, Nord
Yeah.
Game. It's a pretty good thing to put on a shirt. I recommend a lot of people wear a shirt that says my company's name on it.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm very easygoing when it comes to like stuff like that, so I don't really have. I'm not picky,
Hmm.
so it's honestly a hard answer for me to give because I don't care enough to give like
Right. Yeah.
definite answer.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a question that I love because it helps you, like, you can really get in someone's head by, like, what would you wear on your chest proudly that you
Mhm.
put there. But it's one that I can't take any credit for because I used to do another podcast about music, and the guy who I co-hosted with at that time, he came up with that question, so I do it in tribute to him.
Nice. It makes me think of a TKO for Jackbox of
Yep.
just the t-shirts I've made from that. One of my favorites was a dog on a skateboard, crudely drawn, of course, and all it said on the text underneath was "Eat ass and skate fast." And it's just, well, I guess this one wins.
Hmm.
Or a Grookey with a gun, the Pokemon. It's just that was the art.
We had one on here. It was also a TKO shirt that was made, and they were trying to order it, but the Jackbox thing was down at the time, and they couldn't
Oh,
actually order the shirt. But it was
man.
a very terrible drawing of a snake that said, "Damn, I am just not a human."
uh, I can think of as a terrible drawing. A snake is like what they just drew like a squiggly S and put an eyeball on it top of it.
I think so. I was not there when the shirt was created. These were friends of mine who did this, but
Amazing.
I was out of town when they were playing that game. But yeah, that's pretty great. And then the Eat Ass and Skate Fast reminds me of one that I got on that old podcast. We had the lead singer and lead guitarist of the band Them Evils on the show,
Mhm.
Jordan Griffin. And
Cool.
he was a little bit buzzed on the show. He was not full on drunk, but he told me later that he'd had a few beers before coming on.
Wait, was that an
And
option?
when I asked him the question, he said, "Play guitar and suck titties." I hope no one had any kids in the room while
Like if
watching this, but that's yeah.
I saw that on a shirt, I'd be like, "All right, you know what? Respect. I got like I can't argue this shirt.
Hmm.
It's direct and to the point."
Yep. And I own no less than two Them Evils t-shirts, and none of them have that slogan on it. So I'm a little disappointed,
Unfortunate.
Jordan.
Unfortunate.
Absolutely. Cool. So those are the introductory questions. Now that those are out of the way, let's again kind of begin at the beginning here. Tell me a little bit about how Nord Games came together and what you guys typically do as far as RPG products are concerned.
Sure. So, um, well, Nord started in 2011, but we didn't really, or they didn't really, I'd say they because I wasn't there then. They didn't really start like having product and selling stuff until about 2016. That's when they started, Kickstarter started coming out for some books, some card decks, and we started pushing more and more of that. So now at this point, Nord has we have 6 books and over a dozen card decks. We used to do like dungeon tiles and scatter terrain. Those are discontinued products, but who knows? We might get back into it now, especially with our foray into miniatures at this point.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, just with that, we are getting started with miniatures. Um, Me personally working at the company, I started April last year. Just like I was kind of the catalyst of the company growing. from the CEO's garage to an actual facility, like warehouse. Hiring me, I jumped on as like a everything. Um, I was HR. I was the general manager. Was the CEO's assistant. I was the project manager and the product manager. So I actually officially hired everyone. That was my first job, was to hire myself. So our growth has been really rapid in the last couple of years. We now have we have one, two, three, 6 employees. We have 6 employees and then a couple part-timers that help with fulfillment when we get those big rushes like Kickstarter fulfillment and stuff. And then a handful of contractors. One of the biggest influencers of our product is not an official employee because he lives over in England, but he is basically our art director. His name's Ralph. He's really amazing, and he is the reason why we have such beautiful looking products. I just want to show this off because it's just one of the best art I've ever seen for a D&D book. It's so cool. I know there's a lot of glare, but it's it is so neat. But yeah, that's our at this point our specialty right now is books and decks that help the campaign come into a deeper life, like really give you more as the DM to showcase the world that you're building. And to just help you along the way while you're playing, because a lot of our decks are random traps, random monster encounters, random treasures, just random objects and stuff that can or be story hooks. And it's just for multiple levels, multiple areas. That's why we have over a dozen decks, because it's just so many. We have such a wide variety to cover. And we got your back. Then go to our books. We have NPC codexes that really dive deeper into characters and different just kind of like showing you what you can fill your world with.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the bestiaries, Revenge of the Horde and Dreaded Accursed, which again just really gives you more life to, instead of just, oh, it's a band of 5 orcs. Well, what's their stat block? All the same. Or like, oh, it's another skeleton and 20 of them. Ooh, this time you can have like, oh, that's a skeleton champion and a skeleton war dog. Like, just random things. Like you can get really creative and crazy with it. And that's what we're here to help you do. One of our biggest books that just came out, Spectacular Settlements, which is like over 400 pages. It's a massive tome, can help anyone build any type of like town, settlement, trading post, castle, keep, anything that they want into their world, and have it be vibrant and like not just, oh, it's the town of Dingle and there's I don't know, like 7 buildings. What do you do? Like that doesn't give you anything. But this one, well, with this book, you just do it's actually you have charts, so you can just roll a die if you really want to make it random. And you just roll a die and be like, okay, this town, it has a blacksmith, it has a tannery, but the inn's kind of shady. I wouldn't really recommend that place. The locals are really nice, but at night they kind of all keep to themselves for some reason, and then there's this evil that tramps around. Like we add so much flavor. That's the whole point of our product, is to just help the DMs add so much extra to their campaign to make it a memorable one for the players and the DM at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of an added value that I think a lot of game masters, myself included, kind of take for granted at times. I'm someone who has a lot of downtime in his day job and thinks a lot about my games, and likes to come up with random minutia and stuff like that of, okay, here's this town, it's got this in it and stuff like that. This is the reason why everything crazy is happening around this town. A lot of GMs though don't, either they don't have the time to come up with stuff like that, or after a while, they feel like they've pulled every single trick out of their bag, and all of their towns seem to, feel the same, or all their monsters seem to feel the same. And
Yeah, they
so to
everything's just Tolkien-esque, and at this point they're like, I need something new.
yeah,
I can't think of anything. Yeah.
absolutely. And so to have resources like that, to have, a book of NPCs or a book of unique monsters that can, give you a new angle on that horde of orcs that attacks the party because you need an encounter here. That is something that's extremely valuable, and I'm glad that you guys are out there, providing something like that for, 5th edition and Pathfinder.
Yeah, and most of our product is just shown at 5th edition. We did try in the past to push for Pathfinder as well, but just straight numbers showed that the Pathfinder players, and I can attest to this too as a majorly Pathfinder player, they just don't really like not based product. Like if it's third party, Pathfinder players tend not to go for it. Especially if it brings in new content, because just the balancing is always an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I feel like with 5th edition and probably with 2nd edition Pathfinder 2, it's a little easier to have third party content and not have it be really overpowered or just really wonky compared to the previous rules.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you remember, Pathfinder is based off of the 3.5 D&D,
Yeah.
and that it just leads to so much craziness and so much min maxing of stats, and just little details get abused and overblown. And so you have to be very careful about what you introduce into those types of formats. But then 5th edition, of course, is like, it's way more just open to interpretation and just its story. It's not as crazy detailed for those types of like stats and stuff. So it's a lot easier to bring these third party stuff just to give you better feel and just to improve the story of the content of it without really ruining the everything based on if it's overpowered or underpowered or just so different. And so we don't currently make anything for Pathfinder. Who knows? Maybe we'll jump into Pathfinder 2nd edition and later down the line. But it just depends on how it grows at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and as someone who, primarily plays 5th edition, I've actually never played Pathfinder, but I'm a huge 5th edition guy. The best way I feel like that you can describe this is that, 5th edition is made out of Legos. It's very easy to take 5th edition and add something to it, or break it apart and build it into something new. All the
Right.
pieces are there for you to add stuff on, and it's very easy to bring in, like you said, the outside content. Whereas I feel like Pathfinder is a lot more kind of structured in that it takes a little bit more to bring something outside and attach it to the ecosystem that is Pathfinder, whereas 5th
Absolutely.
edition is pretty much designed with this idea that there's going to be extra content that people bring in, either homebrewed or other companies, and that's built into the system itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's working so much better with 5th edition content. Actually, our Spectacular Settlements book is system agnostic, because it became so big, and the way that we were making it, we were originally like, yeah, it's gonna be for 5th edition, and then as we're building it, our designer was just like, no, anyone can do this. It just gives you the story, and doesn't necessarily give you the stats, or like it doesn't. You can just reapply the in-game stats to the buildings that you created, but it just gives you the story and fleshes out the world for you. It doesn't need to be for a specific system, which I think is just awesome. That's what makes that book. Oh, and over 400 pages. It's $50, not even like 60 or 70 that you see in some content. So it's just in my mind, it's practically a steal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the CEO has definitely talked a couple times. He's like, man, I can't believe we're just selling this for $50. Because you look at it, if you're gonna go get a 5th edition D&D book, isn't it like, for like one of the main ones to even play, it's like $60, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even like any of them, they're they're way overcharged, but you need them, and they know that, and we know that we need them, and so they're $60.
Although I will say you do find a lot of the 5e books on pretty good sales. Typically, like if
Yeah,
you go on
because
Amazon right now, the
there's
5e
so many
books,
out there
yeah, the
that
5e books you typically get for around $35.
there's always sales and bundles and deals happening, and I definitely always recommend doing that instead of just buying them outright. Granted, even we actually have a clearance section for a good chunk of our settlements books, just any that were have like slight damages upon arrival, like maybe there it was like has a cut on the back, or the side of the book was crushed in a little bit, just enough where we wouldn't feel comfortable selling it at full price. So if anyone ever wants to check out some of our goods, we do have a clearance section as well, for anything that was either got like ran out of print and we're trying to get rid of it because we have a new run of it, or it just was slightly damaged where it's like dinged or cut, and we don't feel like it's worth being at full value. We have that as well available. So if people want our product but need it at a lower price point, but want it physically and not just the PDF.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now you've mentioned the Ultimate Bestiary already and the value that adds to the game, and that leads us, right into this Kickstarter campaign, because what you guys have done so far for this campaign, it's based largely on Revenge of the Horde, correct?
Yes, this campaign is specifically for 30 characters or creatures, I guess, beasties, out of our Revenge of the Horde Ultimate Bestiary book. We have, I think the count was 114, 112. I'd have to recount. It's just over 100 creatures from Ultimate Bestiary Revenge of the Horde. But this is our first jump into miniatures, and we wanted to make sure that we were careful on how we did it. We didn't want to overpromise and then fall flat and not be able to provide. So even still, the our goal 75,000 is way higher than any of our goals have been before. Uh, our previous alchemy, I believe, was the highest before that,
Mm-hmm.
or like what we were asking for. Let me just double check here because I have it up. And what we needed was loading. Come on, load faster. 20,000. And yeah, 20,000 versus 75,000 for what we needed for just to get the miniatures printed. Um, so it's very scary, honestly, to have such a lofty goal for something we've never done before. Uh, but we have passed that. We are at 89,732 as of right now. Like you mentioned earlier, we have 3 more days left. Very excited. I'm probably not going to be sleeping, like I said, until it's finished. Um, this project has been my baby. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as project manager, like I said, I've only been on since last April. Um, so when I jumped on Ultimate Bestiary Dreaded Accursed was a book already in Kickstarter. That means I had nothing to do like with that. It was already going. I just jumped on afterwards, and then Alchemy was already in the process of being created. So I started to have a hand with making that Kickstarter, making it happen. By the way, we have another book coming called The Ultimate Guide to Crafting, Enchanting, or Alchemy, Crafting, and Enchanting. Um,
Gotcha.
it's very cool. We have the PDF out as a just like a viewing test, like for people to see who have backed it, so they can give us any suggestions or thoughts on the matter. Maybe they saw a spelling error we missed. Just a couple little things before we go into print, which should be happening 2 p.m. But this project, Ultimate Bestiary Miniatures, is the first one that I really was. I was the main lead for this. I made sure I did all the work to make it come to life. I found the company, the production company. I've been talking to them constantly, back and forth, getting them ready to get these miniatures printed. We're working with them to do the models as well. So if anyone had been following our Kickstarter from the very beginning, they would have noticed that the models completely changed halfway through the Kickstarter because not completely, but they got a major update and they looked a lot better when they first showed them off, because that's how much I'm still working with them. Ralph as well as the art director. We're constantly talking back and forth, making sure that these look exactly what we want them to look, and we are very confident in the quality that this company can produce. They have and are producing miniatures for a lot of other well-known companies and board games and stuff. They've multiple awards. I don't think I can say or should say what other like companies they've made miniatures for, but they're just what I can say is that they are well-known miniature creators or miniature sellers. Um, we are going to make them available for stores, so they're going to be in those blister packs, like you'll see, like if you go in and buy a D&D miniature from Nolzur's, you'll see it's like in that blister pack with the 2 or 3 miniatures or 1,
Yep.
depending on the size. That's our plan, is to make it just like that, but our own spin, our own twist on it. Make sure everyone knows it's the Nord product. So very excited for how this comes. I really hope we hit some of these stretch goals, because the stretch goals are just adding on more content. Like the miniatures, we decided to just have, okay, you get all 30 right off the bat. We're not going to lock any miniatures behind stretch goals, because we wanted to make sure that you got those miniatures. But then the stretch goals just added new content. Like our first one, you get a 30 card reference pack for all the monsters you have. So this will give you the stat blocks that you would see in the Ultimate Bestiary book, but just as a simple little card.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one, this is my favorite one, and this is one I really hope we hit 125,000. We'll be adding physical tokens to the packs, which I've never seen any other miniatures do this before.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, have you purchased a Nolzur's pack of miniatures or anything like that before?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you open it up and they're not connected to their base. The base is off to the side, the little black base.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine in that little crevice where the base was, there was also the same size circle, but with the art of the creature that you just purchased on that token.
Gotcha.
So the way that I hope that people will see it, as a DM would see it, would be like, oh, I'm just buying double the amount of creatures because I can put down the mini and I can put down the token, and that they're 2 of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my hope. And it's very easy to add. If we get the funds for it, we can have that just thrown into each production of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, why hasn't anyone done this before? Because there's already the space to put it in. So I'm I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't been done before, because I think it's an amazing idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then past that, for the stretch goals, it's just we want to give away a reprinting of the book, and so if we get even higher, we're like, hey, everyone gets the PDF for free. We get even more. We're like, we're gonna start just throwing in the hardcover copy, because if we get to these certain levels, it would actually pay for a new print run of the book.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. We got 3 more days. We might just spike in popularity. A lot of the people who do the notify me when it's ending, they get that 48-hour email, and then that's when they just jump on it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Like I said, no sleep. Just watch the bar go up.
Yeah, and I really do hope, as someone who is pledged at the $100 level, I do hope we get up to that second print run, because I do like to have my physical books. So this is my personal plea as a backer of this project to all of you who have not backed it yet. Let's get to that level here within the next 3 days.
Yeah, you'll find it by typing in Ultimate Bestiary Miniatures. Now that is Bestiary, Bestiary, not BEAST. I've had this conversation with, like I said, our British ally, Bestiary.
Yes,
as he would say it. Both are correct. It just depends who you ask. But we are an Ultimate Bestiary company, not an Ultimate Bestiary company.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I should. But I do want to say, like, as I alluded to, talking about Ready to Curse and stuff, that is our goal. We do want to make all of them as miniatures. we would love to. It definitely depends on how well this one does. If we can, that'll just kind of basically give us how soon we can do another one. But we would love to make more, because that's one of the biggest most comments we've seen was just like, oh, I would love to see different ones. Like, oh, I wish you guys did this part of the bestiary, or oh man, can you guys do some of the undead? Because that's what, like, let's be real, everyone loves undead.
Oh yeah.
And if they got like way cooler, different looking monsters than just here's skeleton with spear, here's skeleton with bow, and then like a little more interesting than that, I think people would be all over that. Like we have 9 different liches in our book, for the different casting styles. Like we have primal liches, arcana liches, and highest liches. And it's beyond cool. And I've never seen miniatures or even liches like that before our book. And so I definitely would look forward to making that a reality as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just to talk a little bit about what we've got here, as we mentioned, this is based on the Revenge of the Horde book, but just for anyone who's unfamiliar with the product line, what we're looking at here is goblins, hobgoblins, and orcs.
Yes.
I believe there's one troll that's included as well.
Ogre.
Right?
We have one ogre.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because we wanted to make it an even 30 for this project, and there were 9 hill goblins, 10 hobgoblins, and 10 orcs. And so we were like, well, let's throw in an ogre, because that'd be fun. And so that's what we did. And to be fair, we do have 3 different types of goblins in the book. We went with the hill goblins instead of the forest goblins or the cave goblins. I'll be honest with you, those cave goblins are creepy. I definitely look forward to adding them. But personally, I'm most excited for these miniatures, the hobgoblins, because how often do you see hobgoblin? And how often do you see hobgoblins in their like more truer, like terrifying form of, they are a military race. Very militaristic, very like, they just get things done. And orcs are big and scary, but hobgoblins use tactics. And that's I think it really shows in the miniatures that we have, that you can see that they're definitely units that you can just be putting them side by side, and they actually do get stronger depending on what creatures you have out. Like I believe it's the hobgoblin legate, or however you legate. I think it's legate. That he gives a bonus to any other hobgoblins around him to damage and attack.
Yeah.
So cool stuff in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these hobgoblins, even like I've got some Nolzur's hobgoblins right here that are just kind of based on the limited art that you see in the player's handbook. Like there's this guy here, the pointing hobgoblin captain. They look fine. But these hobgoblins really are, I'll say, something special, because they're so varied in the way that they look, the poses that they have, just the variety in the actual minis. Like there's the hobgoblin imperator, who's like martial arts grandmaster hobgoblin. I'm super
he's
excited
like the
about
lord.
that one.
He's like the overlord of the hobgoblins type person. If you had to pick one. Like the legate is the one that's like commands the troops, but the imperator is who he or she would then go to and be like, okay, what's the next thing, master? And it was interesting trial actually for the imperator specifically, because the artwork is him sitting down with his sword laid across his hands. And when we got the first iteration of a miniature for this, the sword was still across his hands, but then they had him standing. And that looked kind of weird. So we a few back and forth, and now we have the updated one where now he has the sword, the tip is resting on the ground, and he's resting his hands on the pommel. And it really has this very commanding presence. That I'm very excited for. And I don't know if you've seen any of the like Facebook ads for us or not, but the Hobgoblin Archer has gotten so many people talking about it, about like, that's a really big bow. That's huge. There's no way that a bow's ever that big. That's way too big. I know this is a fantasy, but come on. And our response has been that this is an historically accurate
Yeah.
size for a longbow.
Mm-hmm.
A British longbow is about 6 feet
Yeah.
tall.
Oh, yeah.
We're basing this off of the Japanese longbow, which is like 6 or 7 feet. But as you might imagine, ancient Japanese person, a little bit shorter than like an English, and they still had these massive bows that they would just kind of draw back and still fire at great distances.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we were going for. And he has that really dynamic pose of basically turning himself into a tripod by resting his knee down, and so he can aim and stay steady. And I love it. And it's just so funny how many people commented on it, talking about how that's not real. And then you see some other people comment, actually it is. Actually.
Yeah, I mean, like my reaction to that, I think it was an Instagram ad that got me to actually see the Kickstarter and then led me down the path of getting you guys on the show. But seeing that Hobgoblin Archer and being like, that looks like, I've seen the paintings of the Japanese warriors who are kneeled down drawing those huge bows. I was like, that looks awesome. That looks really, really rad, and it's different from just the typical, the archer is standing and drawing the bow like they're Hawkeye, and it's a giant bow like you see in those depictions. So
yeah, Hawkeye uses a short bow.
Yes, he does.
A very short bow.
Mm-hmm. Or a compound bow.
Yeah, a compound bow, sure. But just the bows have gotten smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. One, because, well, actually, I think one of the main reasons, honestly, is just because better technology.
Yeah.
Like you said, compound bow, or like the ability to put the torque in a smaller bow. That was huge for the reason of having that massive backdraw to get all that power, because otherwise it didn't have the power. Mm-hmm. They just didn't have the technology for it. Of course, you look at the Middle Eastern Mongolians. They had those very small short bows that they would fire while riding, but those weren't super long range.
Right. Yeah.
Those were for skirmishing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just it's so interesting to look, and like people are trying to equate it to current day bows when we're like, well, no, this is back in fantastical times, like you said. So it's way back years and years ago for technology wise. Mm-hmm. But there's also a crossbowman in it. So
yeah, archery I found is one of these things that a lot of people do not understand. And it's because it's purely because of movies, because in your favorite movie that features archery, Legolas, that is a prop bow. It doesn't have the draw weight that you need. It is that arrow is likely CGI that you see. They're not actually shooting arrows because it would just look pathetic and someone could get hurt. Mm. So people legitimately don't understand archery, and there's this great YouTube channel that I watch called Shadiversity. It's guys basically just talking about medieval weapons. And his explanations of bows, he's like, these things were gigantic, and the people who wielded them were like yoked because, one, they were farmers, and two, you had to be to pull that thing all the way back the way that they did. So yeah, I mean, anyone who's giving you guys crap over that bow being too big just needs to actually look up, real archery and see what it was like in the time frame that these role-playing games are emulating and fantasizing.
Yeah, it's fine. Honestly, what it does is just drum up more people talking about the product, which is what we want. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, we're happy for it.
Yeah.
It just was always so funny because that'd just be like, would cause like so much like vitriol between people. It's like, no, this is wrong. Like, why does it matter? One, it's right. Two, why are you mad?
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm super excited about this. As I've said already, I'm in at the $100 level. So what we're looking at here, if I can scroll up to where that is, this is the Horde Army pack. Yes. And so basically what I'm looking at here is, first of all, I get 3 ogres, which I'm very excited about. And then I'm looking at like 3 of the Goblin Bombers, a Goblin Alchemist, 5 of the Grunts, Hobgoblin Legate, Hobgoblin Pikeneer, 4 of the Hobgoblin Scout Grunts, Soldier Centurion, 3 Hobgoblin Warriors, Hobgoblin Archers, 3 Ogres already, and then 3 of the Orcs, Orc Bruiser, Orc Commander, Orc Shaman, and Soldiers. That's a ton of miniatures. I believe, let's see, 66 miniatures in all. And I already have a bunch of miniatures that haven't been painted and need to, so I'm excited to add to that number.
There was a thought, we actually looked into this a lot, of whether we'd be offering painted versus unpainted. We even did like a small survey. Ultimately, we decided to go with unpainted because ultimately people, it was just indifferent. They're like, yeah, I will buy it painted, I will buy it unpainted, I don't care, give me mini. I'm like, all right. But the fact that then we were looking into, well, what if we got like huge amounts of money suddenly? We were thinking about having like a hidden stretch goal where then we would also offer a painted version. And that's definitely not off the table, but it does increase the cost a lot.
Oh yeah.
Even for the minis themselves, the cost goes up because how many cuts are done of the mini so they can make sure they paint it properly before putting it together is a factor, which people don't realize. Like because these are going to be injection molded. They make one giant mold out of like steel or something that fits like 6 minis. Then they inject the PVC into it. But if it's going to be painted, they'll do multiple cuts, create those, paint them, put them together, then have the completed miniature, and that just increases the cost exponentially. But it's I've been looking into all of this a lot, like I said, to see what would be the best path, and so right now we're doing just unpainted.
Yeah, and this is probably personal bias speaking because I love to paint miniatures. But if you look at, like painted miniatures that you can buy, like if you look at a HeroClick, mine are in the closet, so I can't easily grab one right now.
Same.
Yeah, the colors are there, they're right, but if you like really scrutinize one, the detail is not as sharp as it could be if you hand paint it. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I can't paint. You can teach yourself to paint, and even like a really entry-level basic paint job is oftentimes better than a lot of what you would get quality-wise from a factory paint job.
And sometimes though people they just want it painted. They're just like, I don't want to go through this. Like everyone that I know who likes painting also will purchase a painted one. Just personally that I know. Like you said, I don't know how to paint. I'm really bad at painting. I have a ton of unpainted miniatures, and I have tried my hand at painting them a lot. So, and it is fun, even when I don't know how to paint and I'm bad at it. It still is fun. You get that sense of accomplishment, like I did this. Even if you just painted the peg pink and you're done, like I did this.
Yeah, and I mean the desire to just have something to put on the table is very strong, for people who get into the terrain, get into the miniatures, and they're just like, I want a Displacer Beast, I don't want to paint one. It's nice to have one that's in color that I can just stick on the table, or I want a wolf, but painting a bunch of wolves seems boring. So yeah.
And honestly, even if it's unpainted on the table, it's still good.
Yeah.
Still cool. Still adds to the atmosphere. And I'll always love to see someone's miniature, especially like oh man, the Hero Forge miniatures where you like spend like $70, but it's all like custom built, and it's like I've seen some real cool ones come out of that. And it's it's so neat to have like the character that you built then is now actually a miniature.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a couple Hero Forge over here. Those can be really fun. They can get expensive, but they can be yeah. The metal ones in particular are super expensive. The plastic ones typically looking at $35 to $40.
and then depends how many add-ons you do for it and whatnot.
Mhm.
Speaking of add-ons, I did want to say, I know you said you got the $100 Horde army. If you ever feeling like you need a couple more orcs, a couple more hobgoblins, you can do $4 for each pack as an add-on.
Mhm.
Each pack will be either 2 orcs and 2 hobgoblins, or 3 goblins, or just the 1 ogre. But they're $4 each, still a dollar cheaper than what you'll see at stores.
Mhm.
They eventually make their way there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean that's competitive with what the Pathfinder deep cuts and the Nulzer's marvelous miniatures. That's pretty
Yep.
competitive with what they're offering. So
That was the plan, is to
yeah.
make it, and that was the biggest thing too, is just finding a company that can then produce them, and so we can still have the proper ROI, return on investment, to do that competitive pricing, to
Mhm.
make sure it's the same pricing as them, because we want to be in the stores, and we want the decision to be what you think looks the coolest, not what has the better price point.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's the most important thing for us. We want you to buy our product because you think it's cooler, not because it's cheaper or more expensive, or any, like, we want the price to be a null reason. Like, we
Mhm.
want you to like us because we have a cooler product.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, to overcome, what Nolzers has, the you guys are already off to a good start to do that, because the Nolzers minis, while they're good for what they are, they're very boring, I'd say. And so I feel like no,
They're plain. I
yeah,
wouldn't say boring, I'd say plain. They don't have as much creativity applied to them, because what they have to do as the line for D&D is to just cover each base.
yeah,
But we get the opportunity, as the not being D&D, not being wizards, that we get to just have fun with each base that we cover,
oh yeah,
and really get wild with it. And but
Mhm.
that's what we did with the bestiaries already, and so that's why we're just directly translating them to the miniature.
Mhm. Gotcha.
And who knows, we might add a few more here and there, if it's not, even if it's not part of the book, if it just works with the line.
Mhm.
Just depends where we get to.
Gotcha. Now, you've already discussed, wanting to do the other Ultimate Bestiary as miniatures.
Hmm.
One question that I have, and this may be very difficult based on just the nature of the book versus what you have here, is there any interest in doing like the NPCs as miniatures, or even trying to put out like player character miniatures?
So yes and no. I'm gonna say the no part, as in, we're not going to be doing Hero Forge based things where it's like
Right. Yeah.
personally done, like player character stuff.
Mm.
But we are, and we have discussed about the NPCs as well. That already has, like, the NPCs that we've created in those books. Nothing's set in stone yet, so
Mm.
that can always change. But that is part of the plans when we do more and more miniatures. We already have plans to do more of the NPC books, because if anyone looks at what we have available, we have skullduggery and warfare. That's it. We don't have arcana. We don't have piety.
Mm.
So we still have 2 more major NPC based books to make, and that will happen at some point. It's not like a super secret. Ooh, are they going to do it? No, of course we'll do it. Like,
Mm.
we want to make sure everything is done and done right. It just will happen eventually. We just don't have a timeline for it yet to tell anyone. Um, because currently we're still very utilizing Kickstarter to make sure that we get the funding to create the print runs, is still very important to us. We
Mm.
would love to get to a point where we can just create a new product and push it, and that's it, and and then sell it. But Kickstarter still is a great marketing tool and a great way to show what we're working on, so people know what's going on. And it's still very important. We're still a very small company. Like I said, we only have like 6 employees,
Mm.
to make sure that we have the funds to continue working on these projects and creating them for everyone.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and even just kind of going back to what you said about not wanting to do the Hero Forge thing, even without doing that, you could do something similar to what like Reaper or Dark Sword does, and just make these minis that are good quality that people will use as their PCs.
Yeah, and that can very easily come from the NPC books that we make.
Oh
Is
yeah.
because honestly, if you look at the characters that we make in those are playable characters. Like you can grab it. They have stat blocks. You can grab them and go and make and say, well, I'm going to play the character. You can do that. And so these are going to be those types of people. And so, yeah, very easily it'll grow into that. We'll probably end up doing is we'll make like maybe multiple variations of each character. So there's just different looks. Maybe have different gear sets on them, because in the books we have them growing in levels, so you can utilize them in different levels, like level 1, level 5, level 10. It varies, but so we'll probably end up having it be a lot more variety, even though it's like slightly lesser. With the bestiaries, it's very easy. Just we have over 100 choices for each, so let's just grab boom, 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 all of them. The NPCs, it's only like 20 out of the book. Right. So we have to be a lot. We would want to be a lot more creative with it.
But yeah, and this is speaking to anyone out there who's looking for that perfect miniature for their PC. You don't necessarily need to use Eldritch Foundry or Hero Forge, or God forbid, don't use Anvil. Use Eldritch Foundry or Hero Forge. Just putting that out there. But like, you don't need to do a custom miniature because there are so many out there that are just like so cool looking. I'll use this guy as an example because I just did him. I've got this dwarf pugilist from Reaper that I just did. He looks awesome. I'd use this as a PC any day. So yeah, I mean, stuff like that. When you guys put out those NPC miniatures, I'm sure there will be tons that someone will look at, on a shelf somewhere or in the Kickstarter and go, that is extremely close to, my concept of this character in my head. That's gonna be my PC mini. I'm gonna use that as this is gonna be my guy.
Yeah. Most of my miniatures that I use for my PCs were just, this is close enough. I like it.
Yeah.
And so I just went from there. Yeah. Yeah, but then of course you gain new items, new armor throughout the campaign, but the miniature doesn't change. Right. It's just a representation of what your character is in your mind, placed onto the field.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, if you have the disposable income to every time you get new armor, new weapons, just be like, new miniature, here we go. Or if you have a 3D printer.
Yeah. That's the thing. A lot of people are having 3D printers now. So that's why for the STL file, the digital download pledge, I'm going to be going through making sure that people get to I've learned now a lot more about 3D printing, that there's going to have multiple STL files that I give out depending on what 3D printer you're using. If you're using resin, if you're using PVC, there's different types. They need supports or no supports in sections. So I'm going to go through this whole thing, through a whole process, editing them and make sure that they're ready for that, for when I deliver those to people.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing. My wife has already heard me utter those dreaded words. Now that miniatures are overtaking my office, she's already heard me use the words 3D printer, and I've warned her that someday that might become a thing, but for the time being I'm just looking. Just
browsing.
Sitting there looking at them going, not yet. Not yet. Let's wait for that price tag to drop a little bit on that really nice resin one. And then we can go for it. But for now, let's wait on that.
Thankfully, I have a friend local who has one resin printer and 7 PVC printers.
Oh my God.
It's his side job is that he does printing. He has an Etsy shop where he prints out cosplay weapons and creates them for people and sells them. So I'm gonna ask him. I haven't yet. I should though. If I can, like, hey, can I give you these files and you print them and see if it works, and then go from there. Of course, pay him for his time and then let him keep the minis that get printed, which I think he would enjoy. But yeah, it's pretty cool to see that process and to see some people go crazy with them as well.
Absolutely. Well, Greg, we are running up against the end of our time here. So, as is customary on Rollin' Bones, we've discussed the Kickstarter, but there's so much that you guys already have available on your website. I am going to give you this time to promote anything that you've got to promote, anything that's coming up that you want people to know about. It is absolutely your floor here.
Okay. So, as we've said before, Nord Games. We are nordgamesllc.com. We have a massive internet store where you can also find other products from other companies that we help out as well, like Loresmith, amazing creator, some amazing content. He has these wondrous books that help you create your taverns and your shops. I just wanted to give him a shout out because his name's Chris as well. Our CEO's name is Chris. He's a great guy. He lives over in the Netherlands. Really tough to talk back and forth though because of the odd times. But yeah, you'll see his content there too. We have a bunch of other companies' products there as well. We love helping out each other. I know you said to use the time for my product, but I have to let you know about everything that's there. But on more of our content, so we have multiple new products. We have Treacherous Traps that came out, the book along. It's right there actually, along with multiple decks where you can just draw random traps or even make the random traps. We have a random trap generator as a giant deck that you can grab the cause, grab the effect. It is really fun, really brutal. Your players will remember it, and they will not remember it fondly. But it is amazing tool to use to add a little extra zest to that dungeon. Like I said before, we have the Spectacular Settlements, a massive tome that helps you build the world around you, so everyone will remember that town. That little town suddenly had a lot more life into it. But something that's coming on the horizon hasn't really officially been announced yet. We are making a sister book to the Spectacular Settlements. It is called Dangerous Destinations, and it will be. You'll probably hear more about it in the few months, but it's coming, and I just figure I'd drum up a little more hype for that as we're getting going. Already working on it, trying to get as much as we can done before we reveal it to everyone. Super exciting. Let's see what else other than the undead bestiary. We have the horde bestiary. Get those miniatures, please. Now I'm just rambling at this point. We have another bestiary that's being worked on eventually. This one is called the Ultimate Bestiary: Secrets of the Fae, and I feel like that has been a subject that is not touched enough, and shall be a very cool book. Very mystical, I guess you could say. Just you never know what's going to happen when you're dealing with the Fae. Oh, what else? We are actually also, this is probably a lot less to consumers, but we are becoming more of a fulfillment house now as well. So if anyone ever has a Kickstarter and you need help fulfilling it, contact Nord. We have a really good facility set up and very good. What we do send out, like, I think we sent out recently 5,000 books in a week for another company. So that's a cool thing that we're just now kind of working our way into. If you use BackerKit, we're working with them to host our fulfillment center for people to really help out. Especially, we'll definitely help out little guys too. Say you only had a few hundred, but you don't have enough garage space for it. We got you covered. Gotcha. That's how we started, and that's how a lot of companies are still working out of. Is they're just their garage and maybe a little shed out back that they're just running out of space for. I guess that's it for now. Please give us a like, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Nord Games, or Nord Games LLC. We have a Discord that's growing and actively becoming more and more enriched with people talking, sharing their rooms that they game in, sharing the worlds that they're creating. It's where we can talk about all the content of the products that we make, or even share just other stuff from other companies. We're really open about that. We're not trying to only talk about Nord. No, we love other companies. We love growing the community in every which way. We definitely support every other company around us.
Absolutely. And guys, one more time, just because, if you're watching this live here with us, you've got 3 days to jump on this if you're interested. And
Please
if you're watching this later,
help pay my bills.
Yep, absolutely. If you're watching this later on Twitch as a replay, 3 days, possibly 2 days if you're watching it tomorrow. If you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening on audio, you've got 1 day left to back this. We're down to the wire here. The project is fully funded, so you will be getting your miniatures, but we want to hit some of these stretch goals. We want to see... sorry,
I said absolutely. I was just agreeing with you. Absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, we want to see these stretch goals. We want these tokens. Maybe we can get some of these PDFs as well. I'm holding out hope for that solid physical book as well. But we'll see how it ends up.
Yeah, and honestly, don't worry if you hear this and it's already too late. We will have it as a pre-order store as well. So if you get to that Kickstarter and it's already finished, go ahead, click that pre-order button. It'll be there, and you can just jump in and get some minis still to be delivered to you as soon as they're ready.
Absolutely. Well, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. Greg, thank you so much for coming on and doing this and talking about this project. I'm super excited for it. I can't wait to put these things on the table and paint them up and have my players face off against these orcs and goblins and hobgoblins. Just to let you guys know what's coming up on the channel, this Saturday we're doing something brand new for Danishes and Dragons. My first ever Let's Play of a video game. I've never streamed a video game before, but we are doing a special presentation in honor of Baldur's Gate 3 now being released in early access. I am going back to the original Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition for a segment that I like to call Breakfast at Baldur's Gate. We'll be starting that this Saturday. Hope you guys will join us. And then another new thing that we'll be doing this time next week. He's been on the show before, but Stu Horvath of Vintage RPG is coming back on to kick off a brand new series of episodes that we'll be doing sporadically on the show. He and I will be running down the history of, one of the great game companies in the world, a game company that's brought a lot of people into the hobby, that being Chaosium. We're going to be doing these history episodes moving forward. I'm already working the phones with Green Ronin to get someone from their team to discuss the history of that company. Basically, we'll be discussing all of these RPG histories of these different companies that you guys all know and love moving forward, with the exception of TSR, because that ground's been covered several times. And we already did an episode on that with David Ewalt discussing his book that he wrote on the subject. But yeah, that's all coming up this week and next. So guys, thank you for tuning in. And whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard. And I'll see you next time.
Very nice.